Hey, this is Matt once again. We're about to the videos. The paid requests. It's time for Antonio. Thank you so much for that. For those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, this is more of a topic video where he mentions Sony versus Warner Bros. In the 2000s and why, or how, I should say, Spider-Man and Harry Potter ruled the 2000s. I guess what he means, like, okay, compare Sony to Warner Brothers during the 2000s decade, 2000, 2010. And yes, Spider-Man 1 and 2 were successful. I wouldn't say they ruled the 2000s, though. I mean, those two did well. Spider-Man 3 was looked at as a disappointment by a lot of fans, a lot of critics and stuff. And maybe made some money, but I don't know, as much as the studio wanted. Warner Bros., I mean, the Harry Potter films, I've seen the Harry Potter films. I remember not minding some of them. I don't remember anything about them, though. But yeah, you could argue, yeah, Harry Potter, they were very successful. They made a ton of those movies, and each one made a lot of money for Warner Brothers. So yeah, Harry Potter is one of those that ruled the 2000s. I agree with you on that. And when you compare both companies, I mean, there are a lot of films with both companies I enjoy throughout that decade from each company. But also, you can't forget that Fox and Disney were fairly popular in the 2000s as well. Whether it be Disney with the Pixar animated films, that stuff, whether it be Pirates of the Caribbean and how successful that franchise came to be, Fox, I mean, not just the X-Men films, which X-Men in 2000, and then X-Men 2, and all that stuff. But then you also have their other Fox properties that, whether you like it or not, made a little bit of money. Even Live Free or Die Hard in 2007. The Avatar, of course, that was Fox, which became the biggest movie of all time at the end of the decade, 2009. But okay, if you look at Sony and Warner Bros., like, I wrote down like some of each of these companies that I enjoy. Like Sony, Hollow Man, The Patriot, Triple X with Vin Diesel, Anger Management with Adam Sandler, Tears of the Sun with Bruce Willis, Bad Boys 2, Hellboy. I think Rocky Balboa was kind of released by them. Pineapple Express, Zombieland, some other Adam Sandler stuff, 2012. And then Warner Brothers, Get Carter, Matrix 2 and 3, Exit Wounds, Scooby-Doo, Constantine, Michael Clayton, Friday the 13th, The Hangover, The Blind Side. So when I say that out loud, I would say you could easily argue Warner Brothers was more successful than Sony during that decade. Because, okay, Sony, I liked Hollow Man, but they didn't do that well. I didn't mind Men in Black 2. It made a bit of money, but it was looked at as a little bit disappointment. I liked Tears of the Sun, but that didn't really make any money. They were successful with Adam Sandler stuff. They were successful with Spider-Man 1 and 2. They were successful with the Da Vinci Code. And again, like Zombieland, Pineapple Express and stuff. But you look at Warner Brothers, Harry Potter films, humongous. I mean, Harry Potter has to be one of the most successful... Actually, my phone's not on. Has to be one of the most successful franchises of all time. With how many movies they made, and like what, every 2 or so years it came out with one. There's quite a bit of them. And then you look at, okay, Romeo Must Die, successful Jet Li film. Exit Wounds, successful Steven Seagal film. People might not have liked Matrix 2 and 3, but they did make money for the studio. Scooby-Doo, successful film, whether you liked it or not. Then Hangover, One of those comedies that people like. The Pineapple Express was successful. The Hangover was massive. Like if you weren't there, people would not shut up about The Hangover. And I liked the movie, but people were like, "Oh, this is like the best comedy of all time." That's why they put more money and made those sequels, because of just how out of nowhere The Hangover One got in terms of its box office and pop culture pop culture recognition at this time. And even like Oscars, like The Blind Side, despite the controversy people have, that was a film that made a lot of money, which is a Sandra Bullock film I don't mind. Won an Oscar. Uh, Michael Clayton, good George Clooney film that got some Oscar buzz. And of course, Warner Brothers also had, like you mentioned, Spider-Man 1 and 2 is Sony. The thing to mention with Warner Brothers is Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And you just say those were as successful as Spider-Man 1 and 2. Some would argue more successful because The Dark Knight people think of as one of the best comic book movies of all time. And Heath Ledger won the Oscar and all that jazz. So that was an era where, sad to say, I'm an 80s, 90s guy. For me, those will always be my two favorite decades of film. But when you look at the 2000s, there was a lot of films to enjoy in that decade. Compared to this decade, so far, yes. Especially when we look at films this year. But that was the changing of the times. You know, the 90s ended. And by the time the 90s ended, studios and companies, and they realized the public, they were not interested as much of the action heroes of Arnold, Stallone, Van Damme, that type of action. It was more the spectacle. Just how did the 90s end with films like Independence Day, with films like Twister, The Matrix, speaking of Warner Brothers, Star Wars Episode 1. That's another thing with Fox. However people feel about the Star Wars prequels, they were really successful. Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith were very successful. And of course, you start the 2000s, I haven't even mentioned New Line Cinema, Lord of the Rings. Which I think nowadays, New Line Cinema's with Warner Bros., but I think at the time, New Line Cinema were their own separate thing. But that was another huge thing. Lord of the Rings. That's what people were interested in. The big CGI spectacles. That with this new, well, not new, but newer idea called CGI, this technology, we could do anything. So let's push the limit of what we could do and make these bigger than life movies. Now, granted, a lot of times you watch this stuff now and the stuff doesn't hold up the best. I mean, like the CG in the first Spider-Man movie does not hold up that well. But yet I can watch Hard Boiled, and everything in that movie holds up. I mean, I look at the list of Warner Brothers 2000s, and again, this gets tricky because some are U.S. distribution only. Whole Nine Yards, Bruce Willis. That was a successful film, and I like that one. Romeo Must Die, that made money. So then Jet Li did more like Cradle to the Grave and such. Battlefield Earth, that was a huge flop. Perfect Storm, that was successful. Space Cowboys with Clint Eastwood, that was a pretty decent movie, and that made some money. Replacements, I liked. I don't know if that did well or not. The Outer War Wesley Snipes, I remember having fun with. I don't think that did the best. Dick Carter flopped, but I liked that movie quite a bit. Miss Congeniality did fairly well. Fun Sandra Bullock movie. And there were flops. I mean, 3,000 Miles to Graceland, Driven, Osmosis Jones. But then you had your Training Day, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, 2001, Ocean's 11. Let's see, Scooby Doo. But you know, again, there were flops. Pluto Nash was a big bomb. Showtime I liked with Eddie Murphy, Robert De Niro. That didn't do well. The Time Machine with Guy Pearce. That didn't do well. Kangaroo Jack made some money. Matrix sequels made some money. Let's see. Looney Tunes Back in Action did not make money. And yeah, you're just seeing a series of flops because there's. I don't think Troy did that well. Scooby Doo 2 didn't do that well. Catwoman bombed. Exorcist the Beginning didn't do that well. I like Constantine. I don't know. They didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, other than, okay, Batman Begins did well. Harry Potter films did well. The Wicker Man. Happy Feet. That did fairly well for the studio. I keep forgetting TMNT. The 2007 film was Warner Brothers. That's right. And that made a little bit of money, but it wasn't such a gargantuan bit that they're like, well, we need to. I would not have minded a sequel to it. I actually would have been curious, but maybe did a different director, different writer. But it was what it was. Okay, as for Sony. Because again, if you're asking me which I think was more successful, I probably see Warner Bros. Was more successful because they had more Harry Potter films, and pretty much all of them would seem like box office hits. Again, you had some of the stuff with even Jet Li, Steven Seagal. You had Ocean's 11, Scooby Doo. You had the Christopher Nolan Batman films. You had even Friday the 13th. That made money. The Hangover. Some Oscar buzz with Happy Feet. Because I think that won Best Animated Film. Michael Clayton, The Blind Side, among others. While Sony, there were some hits, again, with Adam Sandler, Spider-Man 1 and 2 and stuff. And as for like which company I like their movies more, it's pretty even. It's really hard for me to pick between the two. It's really hard for me to pick. I do not know which to pick between the two. Does both have movies? I mean, Columbia Pictures, Panic Room I enjoyed. Then Columbia Pictures with Sony. Was it Evolution? Oh, international distribution only. Distributed in the U.S. by DreamWorks. There you go. Rollerball remake sucked. Triple Vin Diesel I liked. I like Tears of the Sun. I like the movie Basic with John Travolta and Sam Jackson. I like, let's see. Yeah, they definitely had a lot of success with Adam Sandler. Yeah, Adam Sandler and Spider-Man 1 and 2. Rocky Balboa, of course, I enjoy. Step Brothers, Pineapple Express. I'm just looking at like Paul Blart Mall Cop. Like I said, I like both. It's hard for me to pick which one I would like more than the other company wise. Very tough. Because again, there's movies I like both. There's not one that I just go up I pick over the other, but I do think box office wise, I think Warner Bros. Did better than Sony. So I'm not sure what else he wanted me to talk about, but it's sad that I'm looking through all these movies and I even missed that time of movies, and that's sad. Well, yeah, I look at this year of movies and it's one of the worst movies, one of the worst years for movies in history, man. I'm not even saying that to be shock, jock, shot master. I'm saying it just to be different. I really do believe that. I know other people believe that as well. This year has sucked for movies tremendously. But hey, what can you do? With that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye bye.